Hanratty. I'll be talking about a particular forecast and a forecasting method which we've developed together with Ben Lauderdale, the LSE, and Nick Vivian at the University of Durham. I don't have any slides, so everything I say will be mostly what you have in the associated handout. When we're doing a forecast, we have to get three things wrong. First, we have to work out what's happening constituency by constituency. Because as we've just heard, this election is not going to be characterised by uniform swings one way or the other. Second thing we have to do is we have to take account of the national poll. Because whatever happens in the constituencies, it must add up to the national figure. So we have to take account of the national polling and how that might evolve over time. And that's the third thing, we have to think about how opinion changes over the course of the campaign. So let me take each of those three things in turn, starting with the picture in the constituencies. So John has given you a list of reasons why we shouldn't be doing what we're doing, or why we're very courageous to be doing so. Let me give you one reason why forecasting this election is easier. That's because we have a lot more data. We have around 200, 210 polls of individual constituencies. This is something which is new for this election. And because we have these constituency polls, we can start thinking about how to model outcomes seat by seat, party by party. We have to make some assumptions, some modelling assumptions about how we treat those polls. We have to make some assumptions in order to make estimates for constituencies where we don't have any polls. But because we have all this new exciting data, we're able to tease out some new patterns. And that's why in this forecast we're able to say things like, well, the Lib Dems are really sweating their incumbency bonus, or Labour's vote in certain parts of England is doing really well. So we have a much better picture of the constituency outcomes than perhaps we've had in previous election cycles. So, reason to be cheerful, or at least slightly better. That's the constituency picture. That constituency picture has to add up to a particular national figure. Now, we've been tracking the national polls for the past year, and you can see some of the trends in that national polling in the figure in your handout. We're able to average these so that even if some particular polling companies are a little bit off, or perhaps even a large bit off, hopefully by focusing on the average, we'll be able to discern key trends. And you can see in terms of trends that over the past year we've seen the rise and then fall away of UKIP. We've seen a short-lived Green surge which then petered out. And we've seen the Conservatives narrow the gap to Labour, but not yet overtaken. So that's the national picture at the moment. We, in our model, have made some assumptions about how that national picture changes over time. I think Steve is also going to talk about some of those. And our assumption, which is based on very good historical evidence from elections from 79 onwards, is that parties which have improved on how they did in the last election won't be able to carry all that improvement through the day of the election. Conversely, parties which are down on their performance in the last election will recover some. What in practice does that mean? That means that we should expect UKIP performance to fade, and we should expect the performance of the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats to increase slightly. So we make those assumptions. We have to assume something about how public opinion will change if we want to forecast at all. But hopefully, the closer we get to election day, the greater the weight we place on current polling relative to those assumptions, the more the different forecasts you see will start to converge. So if you don't like these assumptions right now, that's fine, because we'll be producing forecasts each day until the election, and on the day before the election, those assumptions will matter less. So that's a bit about the methodology, which is designed to help you understand the forecast. What is the actual forecast? That's the interesting part. That's the part, I guess, you want to know about. At the moment, or rather, at the time I had to produce these remarks, we had the Conservative Party on 284 seats, Labour on 276, the Democrats on 25, and the SNP on 41. That was the most likely outcome at the time I had to produce this handout. However, this is a probabilistic forecast, so in addition to the most likely outcome, we're also giving you a range of outcomes. So when we do our simulations, we see that 90% of the time, in 90% of those simulated elections, we find that the Labour Party wins between 234 and 321 seats. That's huge. That's a big difference. But there's still time for things to change. God forbid there won't be a dramatic terrorist attack or anything like that. But things can happen during the course of election campaigns. So we tell you about that uncertainty. And if you don't like that, then over the election campaign, again, this range will narrow. So that the day before the election, there will still be some uncertainty in our estimates, but it'll be much narrower than we find at the moment. Because all of this comes from simulated elections, we can make some general claims about most likely outcomes. Again, at the time I had to produce these, it was more likely than not that the Conservatives would be the largest party. We had that as a 55% chance. It's now edged up a little bit closer to 60. But that means, because it's only 60%, that means that you should be prepared to wake up or get to noon on the Friday after the election with either Labour or the Conservatives as the largest party. If someone told you that there was a 40% chance of rain tomorrow, you might well pack your umbrella. You don't want to be caught out. Same in this election, reasonable chance of either party finishing as the largest party. So it's going to be close, and our model is saying it could still go either way. So very exciting.
Thank you very much.